Chris, you want to take us in another direction?
Let's do that real quick. We can't spend a lot of time, unfortunately, because we got to get to the last segment, and Joe wants to rail against me personally. But we want to talk a little bit about CMS. As many of you know, have heard our reporting, did a lot of reporting on this when it came out. I guess it was last week, right? Mm-hmm. Jim's early last week. CMS voted that it would rearrange its funding structure to where the towns that were recently cleared by the legislature to set up their own charter schools if they want to, Huntersville and Cornelius being among them, they said, hey, basically, we're rearranging funding so that there won't be any new capital projects, new schools in these towns. Got to be brief on this, but Jim, coming from the standpoint of the Board of Commissioners, when you got that news, how does it make you feel, and what do you have planned in response, if anything, to this?
I'll do this as quick as I can. I'll go all the way back. I started my political career as a member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education, so I have a little bit of experience in this. CMS, what they don't want to tell you is CMS from 1952 to about the year 2000 spent almost no money in North Mecklenburg as it grew. They then caught up with that over the next 10 or 15 years. They just had a nearly $1 billion bond package this past November that has zero seats for North Mecklenburg, Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, in approximately the next decade because of our funding structure. We will not be able to go back for additional bonds for about another 6 years, and it takes about 3 or 4 years to get schools out of the ground. So they said, we're not going to give you any facilities. The three towns, or at least two of them, Huntersville and Cornelius, said, look, we're growing, we will grow somewhere in the neighborhood of about 90,000 people over the next decade. We have to have facilities. So they asked for and got the ability to build their own charter schools if they need them. That came because CMS had already said, we will not give you buildings. Now, when they had the audacity to go, well, if you're not going to provide buildings, then we're going to have to find a way, a safety net for our kids if we need it, got charter school legislation, then CMS said, fine, now that you're going to build your old schools, we're not going to build any new facilities for you. And so at this point, I am actually thrilled because I have long said that CMS is too large. It's about 150,000 kids. I think it needs to be a much smaller school system. I've advocated for Huntersville and Cornelius and Davidson, and I'd tell you, I would love to merge with the Mooresville City school system. They have a great school system to run it. I would like for them to have their own school system. So I am now pushing the towns of Huntersville and Cornelius and Davidson to actively start the process to make sure that they're in a position to build charter schools. Charter schools are public schools funded by the state, funded by the county. They need to be ready to do that if need be. And then parallel to that, they need to be looking at what it would take to start their own school system because the CMS school system is shrinking.
Jim, I'm curious. I'm getting some text on this subject. They're also suggesting that they should create their own county, like a Lake Norman or a Norman County. Do both of those go hand in hand, or a school district be separate from a county?
The trick is, the question is whether Charlotte is going to also, we talked about this in the last segment, whether Charlotte's going to realize that this region is part of them or not. Right now, they don't think so. So there is a movement to have our own governance up here. Creating a whole county is a really long and tough battle, and I think that's something we think about, and I think there are serious people looking at that. But a school district is a much easier thing to do, although it's not easy, and kind of starts to get you in that direction. The good news for us is that I think if the towns, the governance of Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, and Mooresville in particular will start to work regionally, they can accomplish almost the same thing.
Okay, let's take a break and we'll come